Yes, friends. Now in this video, we will this is a useful in a macro. That's why we want to create the macro. On the basis of this one, we want to create a particular functionality. So make sure that we want to create this functionality with using of the macro. So if you want to create some macro with using of this functionality, how we want to create this? First, you check your file, option, customize ribbons. In this customized ribbons, developer tab is available. First, you will be check here. By default, this tab is particularly disabled. Why it is disabled? Because Excel, this functionality, it will be not usable. So by default, developer tab is disabled. If it is disabled, then please it developer tab is enabled from your Excel file. If it is not enabled for your Excel file, you cannot show this option. So make sure that this developer tab, it will be enabled. In the previous videos, you have to check the protect workbook and all this functionality. Some students have a question that if the data sheet is protected, then the password is break if I'm forgot that password, otherwise else forgetting this password. So this functionality we want to break the password. Yes, Excel breaking the password is possible. So if we are your data is a very secure, at that time you cannot say that your data is in secure place. So make sure that if your data is secure, you want to give two passwords. First, file, protect workbook, encrypt with the password. If it is encrypt with the password, you say that the data password is protect with your password and you can protect this the password value. And same as it is, you will be do the password here, but at the both the place, if it is password, then if any one person know the Excel is very well, so he can easily break your password. He cannot know your password, but he can break your password. He can create the blank your password. Generally, password is in encrypted form, but whenever the Excel file created with the other format, it will be text format, other format. So it is converted to the different format. At that time, password is will be break. Password is in corrupted form, and if it is corrupted form, the password is a break. So now make sure that if your password is break, then it will be password is a blank and your data is in not insecure. But generally you can give not write the permission of the data, you can easily read the data. If any file, for example, is password protected, then we cannot open that file. So if sheet 1 we want to protect it, then anyone can see the password. Yeah, anyone can see the data, it is readable form, right friends? So now my question is that if the sheet 1 we can create the protect password, we want to break this data, we want to break this file. If you want to use the protect workbook password, then also anyone can break your password. Then what is the solution? Uh, no one can break my password and we can secure my password. In the developer tab, if you are using giving password, in the developer tab, that password is not easily break. We can see here how to give the password in the particular data. We can see here, but if your data is a non-developer tab password, then we cannot break your password. What is your developer tab? First, Here is a coding part. We cannot change the coding part. We cannot see the coding part because we have not a basic. We cannot know the basic knowledge of a coding part. So we cannot use this. Here is a adding. Yes. Here is called form control. Here is like ActiveX control. Here is a form control property. All the form control property. Here is a view code. If we have a view code, then here is the add-ins. Here is the tools. Here is a run macro, debug, format, insert, view, edit, file. All the properties available. So make sure that you want to use this format. But yes, code format add-ins we cannot use this because we have a not basic idea about the coding part, because coding is very different in the Excel part. That is tentatively 10 to 20 hours more if you want to use the coding part, and if you want to use the coding part, basic part, you want to learn that. So in this particular macro, we cannot use the coding part. We go for the controller. Insert controller, form controller, and ActiveX controller. There are two controllers basically. There are basically two controllers, ActiveX controller and form controller. You can use the both the controller in your place, but if you want to use the form controller, if you want to use the ActiveX controller, this is on your particular part. You can use the both the way. You can use the ActiveX controller as well as form controller, but form controller it will not work as a ActiveX controller. So make sure that you're working with the ActiveX controller with the form controller. So both the places, ActiveX and form controller, both are in the same place, but form controller it is using in the form, and ActiveX controller we will use in the different functionality. So make sure that you want to use otherwise else you want to use the ActiveX controller, otherwise else you will be use the form controller. Now you can see here the name of this controller. First is command button. Same button it will be using from your macro file, but here is a form controller. So this controller is a very professional controller, you can say that. This controller is a very professional controller from your side. So this is called as a command button. You can use this command button on the particular slide. If you are using the command X controller, form controller, you can use this controller, right? Then after second controller, it's a combo box controller. Combo box controller is what? You can select the particular value in the combo box. This is a drop down menu, one type of, you can say here, drop down menu. If you want to create a drop down menu in an Excel with using of one type of form controller, we can use this command controller. Then now, checkbox controller. You can use the checkbox controller when, for example, if the data is male or female. The data is male, then you can check this controller. If it is female, then you can check that controller. This is called as option checkbox controller. Then after next, this is list box. You have to select the multiple value with using of list box. You can select the multiple value particularly with using of list box. You can select that. It means that I am purchasing the multiple value at the same moment. We have a same quantity. At that time, we want to use the list box. For example, I am using a particular data from list box. Then we can use this list box. List box is basically using from, we want to share the particular dress and material, then we can use this ice cream and multiple value it will be selected on the one time. Combo box and list box are looking with same, but list box we can select only one value. Combo box we can select only one value. In the list box we have to select the multiple value. So this is a basically difference between the combo box and the list box. Here is a text box. You can say that text box is basically used when we are enter the username and password. Then we will use the text box value. This is called ActiveX control for the text box value. So you can use this value. With using of the text box, we can write down any value, write down this value. So on this basis, we have to write down the particular value on the text box. For example, username and password. You can enter the text box. If it is password, then it's come from the star of this data. You can select the star of the data. Now, this is called scroll bar. You know about the scroll bar, up and down value. You have to use this value. This is called as a spine button. For example, if I am adding quantity 0, 1, 2, 3 for plus and minus value. For example, I am adding 1, then up arrow key. If I am down arrow key, then it will be decreased. Up arrow key, it will be increased. Option button. Option button is basically used when you have not a choice. You have to select only one value. At that time, you have to use the option button. This value, otherwise a second value. First value, otherwise a second value. You have to use this option button. You can create the option button on the both the places. This is called a label. Label, it means that you have to write down username. Username, it is your label. Password, you have to write down the password. The password, it's your label. And the right hand side of username, you have to write down the username. This is your text box. The label and text box both are in combined places. Both are in coming with same places. So basically, this is called the label and this is called the text box. Here is an image. You can see here the image value. Here the image value, if any image, any background image, if it is come from your side, then you can use this image value. Here is a toggle button. Insert the toggle button controller. If it is toggle button, then you want to use a particular value on the basis of, for example, I am using the toggle button. Toggle button is one type of button, but whenever you are using with the controller, you can use this toggle button. All the option in form controller also, this is all are the form controller. And this is all are the ActiveX controller. You have to add a new controller. On the clicking on this side, you have to add a new controller. If you add the new controller, you add the next value. So make sure that if you want to add a next value, you have using ActiveX controller, new controller. So you have to add the particular value, right? This is called the controller. Here, every controller property is available. Sheet 1 property, sheet 2 property, sheet 3 property, and every form controller, ActiveX control properties available. Form controller basically available in the form. ActiveX controller is available in the Excel file also. Then run the dialog. Here a dialog box. It's a custom dialog box. How to run this form controller, ActiveX controller, it's your side. It will be using this value. On the basis of this value, we have to use this data. So make sure that you want to use this data. Now this is a source of XML file. If you want to import any other file, you want to add in here. This is called a developer tab. In a Excel, you can see the everything, but you cannot see the developer tab anytime. Because if you want to create your own functionality, own data, then you can create this developer tab. If you want to here create own functionality, at that time you want to create this developer tab. For example, some function is available. If I am a create one function name is ABC. This ABC function, it will be work only for which one I want to edit this functionality, which one added the basic functionality. You want to add this value. If we can use this functionality, ActiveX controller, command button, then checkbox, then list box, if you want to use this, because if I'm insert this button, for example, if I'm using edit this button, you can now you can have a difference about the ActiveX controller and this button. Then go for the developer tab. Now I want to edit this button. You can see that is a difference between this button. This is your photo and this is your button. Both the functionality is same. Right click and we can assign the macro here also. We can also assign the macro here also. Here is a property function is available and we can assign the macro is assigned. But you can see the look and feel. That is very different look and feel from your side. So if you want to use this macro, this is called command button one. And in this command button one, we can edit the particular value, particular macro on this file. So we can edit this one. This is called professional. Professionally, you can use this macro. So if you want to use this macro, you can assign this macro. This is called the command button one. If I insert this button, this is form control. Here we will enter the form controller, then assign the macro. Button number 3, we can assign this macro. Directly it will be assign the macro, assign macro. You can assign the particular macro here. So this is called form controller. You can use the form controller, otherwise as ActiveX controller. Both the controller is using from your side, but this is all are the professional controller. You can, some functionality is available from the ActiveX controller and some functionality is available in the form controller. You can use the both the functionality, but make sure that if you want to use this functionality, you can only drag the button option 1, option 2, option 3, option 4. So your project, your Excel file is very attractive when you are using this developer tab. If you are using this developer tab, you can create your own button, own functionality. So if you want to use this functionality, your Excel is very well using from this functionality. For example, if I'm adding button, here is a macro is available. You can assign the macro, otherwise else new macro. You can create here the macro and you can right click and assign the macro available option. Now you can drag this button also. This is called a form controller. Form controller you can use the assign macro, but if you use the ActiveX controller, this is directly add the controller. So if you want to right click, the assign macro is not available. So basically view code, property, all the functionality is available. So this is a difference between when we added the option button and when we added the form controller. If this option button 1, then you have to check assign macro option is available. Here is the assign macro. Property option, form controller option is also available. Option 1, option 2. Checked cell link. From example, if you want to check the cell link also, you can to add this form controller. We can see the one by one command with using of this option. So we have a clearly idea about this one. But basically, first we will discuss the developer tab. In the developer tab, we can assign the form controller as well as the ActiveX controller. Both the controller is not same. Both the controller is different, but form controller is the same as it is here. You are created recording macro at that time. You can use the particular data. You can using in the Excel file also. ActiveX controller is directly working with your data. So make sure that uncheck. If it is checked, you can see here this is check the value. This is different functionality. If it is design mode and I will write down this value and form controller, it's a cell link, for example, cell link here. Then you can use the cell link and okay, you have one. For example, if this value is disabled, this is check this value. You cannot disable this value if the form controller and if this value is unchecked. You can see here the value is 0. This is directly selling reference from the another side. So you want to use this value. On the basis of this value, we have to use the particular data. We can check one by one controller. So you have to idea about the how to use the form controller, ActiveX controller, and what is the difference between form and ActiveX controller. You can use this controller. On the basis of this one, we have to create a multiple functionality. So we have a clear idea about how to create the basic functionality and basic Excel file. Okay friends, in the next video we have to show the particular data.